Thank you, Becky. Yes, my name, as Becky said, is Börje Justrell. I'm from the National Archives of Sweden, and I'm the coordinator of the PREFORMA project. I will give you a short background and some context before leaving the word to Antonella Fresa, who will present more, and also Bert, Lemmens, and Claudio Prandoni. PREFORMA stands for Preservation Formats for Culture Information / e-archives. So it is something that it's not just for cultural heritage in the sense that they are getting transfers of digital objects, but also for e-archiving. The PREFORMA is what we call a pre-commercial procurement project. It is co-funded by the European Commission under its FP7 program. It started in 2014 in January, and the duration is 48 months, so it means that it would end in the end of 2017. The total budget for the procurement is, as you can see, €2,805,000. We have, of course, a website, which was mentioned, www.preformaproject.eu, and you will hear more about that. The contacts that we have for the project is myself, of course, Börje Justrell, but also the technical coordinator, Antonella Fresa, and the communication coordinator, Claudio Prandoni, who you will hear more from later on. The partners in this kind of project is, besides Riksarkivet, that is the National Archives of Sweden, and Promoter from Italy, which is the technical coordinator, is also a number of what we call technical partners, and also member institutions. And in this kind of projects, choosing the right technical partner is very, very important. You don't have the expertise as a member institutions normally, so you need to have friends who can help you. And we have here as technical partners PACT Expertise Centrum from Belgium, and you will hear also there Bert Lemmens talk from that institution. We have Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, and also the University of Skövde, and also the University of Padua in Italy, and they have special knowledge in different areas which we can use in the project. The member institutions, who actually are the procurers, are what is called the Sound and Vision in English from the Netherlands. We have also something called KIRK-IRPA, that is Koninklijk Institute for the Konstpatrimonium in Belgium. We have the Greek Film Center, a local government management from Ireland, also the Stiftung Preußischer Kulturbesitz in Germany, and also the City Archives in Girona, Spain, Culture Ministry of Estonia, and the National Library of Sweden. Quite a gang, actually, who are all of them working with the preservation of cultural heritage in the sense of digital objects in different ways. The concept, the project concepts, is actually that the member institutions, the procurers, we are facing what we call an increase in transfers of electronic documents and also other media content for long-term preservation. Normally, data content is stored in specific file formats for documents, for images, for sounds, for videos, etc. And these files are usually produced by software from different vendors. But even if the transferred files are in standard formats, the correct implementation standards cannot be guaranteed, because the software used for the production of the electronic files is not in control, neither by the institutions that produces them, nor by the memory institutions. And conformance tests of transfers are done by memory institutions, but are not totally reliable. Different software for testing could end up in different results. And in my institution, National Archives of Sweden, we are using at least 3 different kinds of tests to be sure that we actually can trust the results. And this poses, of course, problems in long-term digital preservation. Data objects meant for preservation that pass through an uncontrolled generative process can, of course, jeopardize the whole preservation exercise. And this is quite simple actually. If you look upon the digital object, and you can say that it consists of 3 layers. We have the conceptual object, the logical object, and the physical object. And you can transfer that into what we call semantic preservation, logical preservation, and bit preservation. And bit preservation, how to keep the ones and the zeros, has been under discussion for a long time now, since the 1970s more or less. There are TSNT interpretability, how to understand, has also been discussed, but object formats has not been discussed that much actually, and that is what we are actually handling in the PREFORMA project. We are, in other words, dealing with what I call logical preservation here. And if we do not manage to do this and handle it in a good way, we will have problems actually. So this is actually the context for what will happen if we are not managing the logical preservation. That means the formats here. The object and aim, and objectives are, first of all, the aim to implement good quality files in various standard formats, preserving digital content long term, and the main objective to give memory institutions full control of the process of conformity tests of files to be ingested into the archives. But it can also be, of course, ingested into archives in state agencies and in other institutions. And the main objective of the PCP that we have launched by PREFORMA is, of course, then to develop an open source software for the management of the whole conformance test process, supporting a range of standards, addressing the needs of any memory institution or other organization with a preservation task. And you will hear more about that later on. We have a very clear open source approach in the project with the aim to establish a sustainable research and development community comprising a wide range of contributors and users from different stakeholder groups. We think that the open source nature ensures long-term availability of the software beyond the memory institutions and suppliers that are involved in the PREFORMA projects. All software developed during the PREFORMA project will be provided under 2 specific open source licenses, as you see here. And all digital assets developed during the PREFORMA project will be also provided under Creative Commons CC BY and in open file formats. So it's possible for you to follow us, and you will also hear more about how to do it actually on the web. The target users and stakeholders. Of course, in the first place, we have memory institutions and cultural heritage organizations which are involved or are planning for digital cultural initiatives. We have also developers contributing code for the PREFORMA open source tools, and we have research organizations providing technical advice to culture stakeholders. We have standardization bodies maintaining the technical specifications of the preservation formats that are covered by PREFORMA, and we have, of course, funding agencies such as ministries of culture and national or regional administrations that own and manage digitization programs and may endorse the use of the PREFORMA tools in the digitization process. We have also other projects in the digital culture heritage domain, and I'm sure that other speakers here will mention a little bit about. So with that, I will leave, well, not the floor, but at least the computer and the screen to Antonella Fresa. Thank you very much.
I'm going to talk to you about a new instrument that is called the pre-commercial procurement, and it is a new instrument generated by the European Commission to support a public demand of innovation. This instrument is driven by public demand of innovation, and it is different from the traditional research and innovation projects. In these kind of projects, the public sector should demonstrate which is the challenge that is going to face, and you heard about the challenge in the presentation of Börje, and should propose a way to address these challenges putting together more public organizations from Europe. So international consortium addressing the same problem of innovation. Generally, I will talk about the pre-commercial procurement, PCP, because this is the first phase and it is the kind of instrument that we use in PREFORMA. But there is another kind of instrument that is called the PPI, Public Procurement of Innovative Solution, and which is conceived as the follow-up of the pre-commercial procurement. In the pre-commercial procurement, the public administrations are procuring something that does not yet exist as a commercial product. In the public procurement of innovative solutions, the solutions are nearer to the market. They are almost on the market. The funding is, the percentage of funding from the Commission is lower, but there is a concrete benefit for the public organizations because they receive a portion of their procurement. Let's look at the pre-commercial procurement. Here we are still in the research and development phase. As I said before, there is a group of public bodies that want to face the same problem together. And so this is the phase 0, when there is a demand of research and development. Then with the project, the public bodies, together with the technical partners that support them in this procurement, joint procurement, launch a contest, a competition, a tender in Europe to select a certain number of suppliers that are asked to provide some solutions in terms of design. So we are still at the design phase. The public bodies select, let's say in this example, in the example that you see, 4 suppliers. They produce the design is evaluated, and the result of the evaluation of the design selects out of the 4 providers that won the first phase, 3, in the case that you see on the screen, the supplier B, C, and D, that are those that will enter in the prototyping phase. At the end of the prototyping phase, there is another selection, another evaluation, and the best prototypes will be invited to enter into the test phase. Clearly, these phases are represented in this picture as individual sequential phases. In reality, there are iterations. In our case, as you will see, we had an iteration on the design, and during the prototype development, at the first prototype, we entered into a new redesign to fix some aspects and to produce a second prototype. What is interesting is that at the end of the pre-commercial procurement, for those public bodies that are interested, they can enter into the next phase 4, that is about the deployment of the solution in real working environment, and this is called the public procurement of innovative solutions. There should always be a high level of innovation, and the scope of these instruments of the Commission is in fact to deliver more innovation in the public sector. In this slide, you can see which are the opportunities in the work program 2016-2017 of Horizon 2020. Here we had, in the call that ended in April, 3 actions of pre-commercial procurement on e-health, a general public interest call and Earth observation, and one PPI action for ICT for aging. In 2017, the budget is doubled. You see that there are 4 actions for the pre-commercial procurement and 3 actions for the public procurement of innovation. You see that in the pre-commercial procurement, because it is more risky, the Commission funds 90% of the cost of the research. In the PPI, there is less risk because it is a deployment, all the technology is available, the prototypes are tested, so the funding rate decreases and it is 35%. However, it is important to stress that, as opposed to the case of the traditional research and development projects, in the PCP and in the PPI, the most of the EU funding must be spent in subcontracting. And this is very interesting because for the public bodies, it is more worth to have a budget to be spent in the subcontracting, while for the suppliers of technology is more interesting to be recruited as subcontractors and not as a partner. So it is a sort of innovation for innovation actions that introduces these bilateral roles. On one side, the procurers, public bodies, plus some technical partners that support them, and on the other side, the suppliers of innovation. PREFORMA is a pre-commercial procurement. As you heard, we have 13 partners. Out of these, 9 are procurers. They are led by Riksarkivet, and 4 are technical partners supporting the procurers in the elaboration of the tender and the monitoring of the tender progresses. We are expecting the outcomes that were discussed and presented by Börje, the 3 open source conformance checkers, but in addition to this, interoperability mechanisms and a sustainable community, a community of common interest that we are expecting will continue to work and to exist on a longer time. You will hear from Claudio that there are public appointments in the coming months where we hope to have you also participating. The structure of the project is made of 2 parts: the coordination activities that are, for those who are familiar with the EC terminology, these are coordination actions, and the collaborative activities that are in fact where the research and development is taking place. As you see, the coordination activities and the collaboration activities, they overlap on the same 48 months of duration. The coordination activities are a sort of wrapper of the research and development. The research and development is done by the suppliers. The coordination activities, the wrapper, is carried out by the public bodies plus the technical partners. In our case, we had the design phase of 4 months, a prototyping phase of 22 months, inserted in this prototyping phase a redesign phase, and we will enter at the end of, we are entering now in June, we are in the process of entering the test phase. There are some lessons we learned. The first is that there is an added value in working together, even if it is difficult sometimes to join the procurement, but the different expertise from memory institutions, academic partners and technical partners create an added value that does not exist when the procurer is singular. The second lesson is that working together with the experts outside the project as well, avoid to have a self-referential approach where the public body that has to procure a certain service has only to rely on its own experience. In this case, there are many public bodies, but in addition, these public bodies interact constantly with the advisory board, the external evaluators in the various phases of the project, experts in law and procurement procedures, associate partners, as we hope you will become, and during the public events and public presentation, the attendees to the events. The third lesson is about the need of sound management and reliable procedures. This is something that everybody knows, but when operating a procurement in a joint action, in a consortium, the management and the procedures should be more structured because there are more partners, and this generates as in effect a better management and a better procedural follow-up of the procurement. Several times public administration have difficulties in relating in a sound way with the suppliers, and suppliers have problems in understanding the needs of the public administration. In this enlarged group of procurers, management and procedures are more quality oriented. Everything that is developed in the project is worth to be shared, and this we thank very much Becky for having organized this webinar, because one of the scope of the project is to share methodologies and best practices. And I apologize for having lost some minutes, and I leave the floor to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Very short, I will focus on one aspect of the PREFORMA project, the PCP project, which is the challenge brief. And we'll talk how we defined the challenge, the PREFORMA challenge, as part of the challenge brief. To start, I'll show you a short timeline of the whole procurement, the initial procurement phase of the PREFORMA project, which started in January 2015, should add the date here, the year, and it was the whole first stage of the procurement ended in November 1st, so about 10 months later with the start of the design phase. You will see that these 10 months consisted of January to June, about 5 months in which we had time to define the tender documents, and then another 5 months to do the actual evaluation and select the first 6 projects to participate in the design phase. 5 months seems a lot of time, but it is not. Why? Because in a pre-commercial procurement project, you're not procuring a defined solution for a particular problem, but the problem is that you, the challenge is that you're actually procuring research and development into multiple solutions. And the real challenge in writing this document is that you have to define an area in which you want suppliers to look for that solution without actually knowing what are the boundaries, what are the limits of this area. And actually, where the limits of this area are is something you find out throughout the project. So the problem is that you have to define an area which is wide enough, open enough to allow for innovation, but at the same time you also have to limit that area in order to ensure that the solutions that suppliers will come up with, that they meet the objectives of your project. How did we do this practically in the project? By writing a challenge brief. A challenge brief is a separate document from the actual tender documents. And in the previous presentations, you already saw a lot of elements, objectives of the projects, which are mentioned in the project description. Of course, as you know, such a project description is a completely different kind of document than a tender specification. So what we did is actually condense all this information in a short, relatively short challenge brief. It's a document of 10 pages that you can still find on the on the PREFORMA website, and we tried to condense all these objectives into one mission statement. And this mission statement is what you see on the slide here. That's what more or less like the catchphrase for the whole project. And actually, the idea is that this challenge brief and this mission statement guides us throughout the whole PCP project, so that it inspires suppliers to come up with innovative solutions, but it also helps the procurers in evaluating the results and the proposals of the suppliers. And it also helps and educates the partners in the consortium to assess and in their turn inspire the suppliers working on the different solutions that are developed in the project. So this mission statement contains touches all aspects of the PREFORMA project. It's about gaining control of technical properties, so container formats, the encoding of the actual content, embedded metadata. The solution has to deal with text, image, sound, and moving images, and it has to deal with deposited content as well as digitized content. And these checkers or this solution that we want to develop, they should facilitate or should help the whole implementing the whole preservation strategy. And important, what we actually want to do is empower memory institutions to address the people that are producing the software for creating these files, so they start working on software that produces better preservation files. So that's in a nutshell what's been described in the challenge brief. This challenge brief is a document next to the actual tender specification, and as a tender specification, actually you want to have all the requirements which you will use to assess, to evaluate the results of the project, the software tools that are being developed. So this mission statement has been translated into a kind of strategy, and that is translated into a list of requirements that you find in the actual tender documents. And in short, this means that, okay, the whole tender is about developing an open source conformance checker and establishing an ecosystem around an open source reference implementation. So in these 5 months, we made a whole exercise in which we try to understand what we want to achieve, starting from the project documents and translate it first into a strategy and then into actual requirements. And these requirements have to be open enough to allow suppliers to come up with innovative new ideas, and at the same time ensure that we are working towards a solution that meets the objective of the project. To make this a bit more concrete, I will discuss one aspect of the project where this whole mission statement was very useful, and that was in defining the file formats suppliers had to work on. Because, okay, you want to develop solutions for the ideal preservation formats, but it's from a practical point of view, it was not possible to keep this question open and not mention explicit file formats, because suppliers need to know more or less what's the actual goal, what's the actual subject of the project. So what did we do? We made a kind of matrix in which we organized all the formats that were candidate formats to be included in the tender. We looked at formats that were adopted by the PREFORMA stakeholders. We looked at formats that are adopted by service providers, and we also looked, and you know that open source is a very important criteria in this project, to what are free and open solutions of free and open file formats. Most simple way to come up with a kind of consensus on which formats we would work for. Because you see in this table there's a whole fauna and flora of file formats that were candidate to be included in the tender. First you try to look if there is a kind of common denominator, and unfortunately only for one project this was more or less clear, it was PDFA. So for the other two projects we had to come up with other criteria. And the second criteria was, okay, it should be a very good preservation format. So we set the criteria, okay, the project we work on should be or should support uncompressed or lossless compressed content. So this limited the scope, but you can see that for the audiovisual projects, we really had to make a selection where there was little adoption among PREFORMA stakeholders and little adoption among service providers. So this was kind of a problem we had to deal with, or this was a choice we had to make. How important is criteria? For the image project, you've seen that there were actually two choices, TIFF and JPEG 2000. So then we look to the other aspect, the third aspect, important aspect, which is we had to deal with open standards because we want the software implementing the file that this can be made available under a copyleft license. So again, for audiovisual, this left us with a group of 7 specifications. And you also see question marks. This means that even for some of the formats we retained, there were still questions out. So what we did in the end, and this is what we included in the tender document, actually we chose 3 different approaches in the project. So for the text project, there was a consensus. So the PREFORMA project on text, the Vera PDF project, is about strengthening consensus of use for PDFA in preservation. For image, we had to make a choice between JPEG 2000 and TIFF, and there we've chosen for TIFF. But there was a lot of TIFF content out there in archives, and actually the PREFORMA project wants to improve consensus on the use of TIFF. And for the moving image, we deliberately choose to enter like virgin territories and make a proposal of 2 container formats, 3 encoding formats, and LPCM, and have suppliers come up with a solution for a combination of these 6 specifications. Did this work? Actually, I show you a couple of numbers to show you that although this was a quite complex challenge brief, we received 16 tenders of 14 different teams. Only 6 were not eligible, so 10 tenders met actually the criteria defined in the requirement documents, and we invited 6 projects for the design phase, which started then in November, and we're now on the way in the second prototyping phase with more projects. So that's very short to show you what is the importance of the challenge brief in PCP projects. If you have questions, I guess we have time later on. Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's my turn now. This is Claudio Prandoni from Promoter. So let me share my screen now. Okay. Hopefully you can see my presentation now, which is about a few hints how to contribute to all what we heard so far by my colleagues Börje, Antonella and Bert. Börje presented at the beginning in his presentation which are our target groups, our target users, which range from, of course, memory institutions and other cultural heritage organizations who are planning a preservation strategy, to developers and the open source community in general, to standardization bodies, but also other projects and organizations working in the cultural heritage and preservation field. So each of those users can participate in our project and contribute to improve what we are doing in PREFORMA in terms of software, in terms of community, in terms of standardization, and so on. So how can content providers contribute to PREFORMA, to our project? So cultural institutions, memory institutions, and in general other content providers outside the consortium can, of course, participate in the refinement of the requirements that Bert just showed us. This was actually our first the exercise that we made to establish, to set up the tender. But of course, PREFORMA will not end at the end of the procurement, and so we are still open to accept, to collect new requirements, to improve the conformance checkers, to extend the functionalities, to extend the formats, hopefully to go ahead after this project with another one which can handle these new requirements that we are collecting. Same for the definition of the policies to be checked, because these conformance checkers checks not only the standard specifications, but also they should check policies established by the member institutions. And we are looking for this kind of example of policies in order to test and to improve the conformance checkers that the suppliers are currently developing, taking into account not only the rules inside the standards, but also these more subjective requirements and policies coming from member institutions. What can they do practically? What we are looking for is data sets, files that we can use to test the prototypes, either during this phase, during the prototyping phase, or afterwards, during the testing phase. So this is a list of institutions that is already cooperating with us by providing us this kind of test files. Test files, which means correct files, but also corrupted files, or also files for which you don't know exactly which is the status. Everything is fine with us. Files that belongs to the three categories that that Bert just showed us, so PDF file, TIFF, and audiovisual file, either Matroska file or other wrapper containing an FF1 video encoding. So we established a repository, it is called the PREFORMA Vault, where we collect all the files that we receive both from the member institution participating as partner in the project, but also from external member institutions, such as the ones that you see listed here and in the PREFORMA website. Just contact either myself or send an email to the PREFORMA info email address. I will receive it, and I will put you in contact with the persons in the PREFORMA project that are in charge of helping external institutions in sending their files, in testing the prototypes, and checking together whether the prototypes fulfill our requirements or whether they need to be improved in some way. And we will send this feedback, of course, to the suppliers that are working on the files. As I said before, we are now testing these prototypes. We are in the prototyping phase, still not in the testing, so-called testing evaluation phase. But of course, it is very important to train the prototypes already now in order to improve them now that we are in the prototyping phase. We will go ahead during the official evaluation phase, so please, there is not a fixed deadline to send files. You can start sending files from now until at least beginning of next year. We will be able to accept them. If some of these files can be used to demonstrate the use of these conformance checkers, so they can be publicly accessible, please let us know so that we can share them with the community. Otherwise, we will keep them confidential to be used only inside the consortium and with the supplier to test the prototypes. What about contributing to the projects? So either testing the prototypes by yourself or contributing. You are a developer, you are a research organization, you want to contribute to the open source projects. There is this unique access point that we call open source portal. You can see the address here in this slide. There you can find all what is going on in PREFORMA with regard to the free open source projects that we chose for the prototyping phase. So you can access a dedicated page for each of the free projects. You can also see the other projects that participated in the design phase, actually. And you will find all the software to be downloaded, the documentation, sample files, bug trackers to report your bugs and issues, and all the relevant links to the suppliers' repositories. This is the first project about the electronic documents, PDF, is carried out by Vera PDF Consortium. Here is in particular the specific page containing all the documentation related to this project, and you can find here a screenshot of the download page where you can download all the executables and source code. The second project on TIFF is carried out by EC Innova, and here as well it is called DPF Manager Digital Preservation Framework, and you can find at this address all the relevant links and documentation about this project. And the third one on moving images is carried out by mediaarea.net, and the media file format they are focusing is Matroska as wrapper, FF1 as a video encoding, LPCM as audio stream. If you are another project working in this field or interested in cooperating with us, please get in touch with us as well. Here you can find a few examples of this kind of cooperations that we are currently running with a number of projects. Benchmark, for instance, with specific focus on the methodologies to evaluate the conformance checkers. Europeana Space, where we are testing the integration of one of the conformance checkers, the DPF Manager, in another web application developed in the framework of this project. EARC, where we plan to integrate our tools in some kind of pilots they will run next year in the framework of this project. And more recently, AppHub, where we plan to deploy the conformance checkers in their store, their hub store dedicated to the a kind of big store of open source software and products. We are also setting up kind of test cases with other organizations, such as the Standardization Forum in the Netherlands or Media Converting Center in Sweden or VAA. These are just started. Hopefully we will be able to show some more concrete results in the next weeks or months. But if you are, again, interested in cooperating with us, in particular to integrate in your legacy system, in your web application, in your environment, one or more of our free conformance checkers, please let us know, and we will see how we can benefit from this kind of cooperation. What's next? As my colleagues already anticipated, we are now about to enter the third phase of the procurement, which is the evaluation phase. And so we are preparing kind of call for contributions to help us in the identification of all the possible issues that the conformance checkers need to be able to check. So all possible issues coming from the implementation of the standards, but also, as I said before, related to policies inside your organization, your institution. So we will set up a model made of classes where each class will model a specific issue and against which the conformance checkers will be tested during the third phase. More will be available soon on the website and on our mailing lists about this shortly, I think. Finally, next appointment, save the date, 23rd of November 2016 in Berlin, the so-called experience workshop. We are planning to run this workshop in a similar way to the previous one in Stockholm earlier this year. So there will be a morning session dedicated to presenting the results of the project, in particular the experience of the member institutions working the project and working with suppliers under this kind of research and development agreements and contracts, and an afternoon session, a kind of exhibition where the 3 suppliers will show live, demonstrate live their products, almost final, because we are here at the end of the prototyping phase, and so you will be able to walk through their booths and talk with them directly at this event. So save the date. We are setting up a website. The link is here. It's just a very first draft now, but more information will be available very soon there. And thank you very much. These are our contacts, websites, the blog, and I'm finished.
Thank you very much, Claudio, and thank you to all our presenters. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I can. If I may, I can reply to the question from Remco. Will PREFORMA be followed up by a PPI? We don't know. We are still discussing this option. We think that the PREFORMA needs some updates. It was mentioned also by Claudio in terms of new technology to be added. We think that in addition to the conformance check, the digital archives, in order to be preserved, need some sort of dynamic behavior. They should be able to reconfigure their size depending on the life of each document. They should be able to react differently on the basis of the rights of copy that exist for each document. So we are thinking towards a new PCP to extend the functionalities that we have developed in PREFORMA. If the PREFORMA conformance checkers will be followed by a PPI is still under discussion in the consortium. Maybe while we wait for another answer, I can add that the PPI is a normal consequence of a PCP where there are patents, protected technology to be deployed. So when it is necessary to buy the results of the PCP or other technologies in order to deploy the service, then the PPI is the right instrument. In the case of PREFORMA, we have everything as open source, strictly open source solutions. So we are relying much more on the creation of a sustainable network of common interest that will exploit the results that are published on the open source project website more than a PPI. This is the reason why we are not yet decided about the PPI.
Well, I think we're nearly out of time anyway, so I'll just say thank you again to our presenters and thank you to everyone for attending. As I mentioned before, we'll send round the links to the recording and slides. So I'll close the webinar for now and thank you very much again. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.